Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me again. My apologies for getting started just a little bit late today. We've had some of our guests are wrapping up with other events. Of course, early voting starts tomorrow. Early voting is July 15th through July 30th. And then, of course, election day is August the 4th. Um, the reason why I started to this Meet the Candidates is because so many people during election season would ask me who is running for all of these positions. I see so many names on the ballot. Should I just pick somebody or should I skip over it altogether? But these positions are so important because these are the people who make decisions about our lives, about the education of our children, about the criminal justice system, who goes to prison, who gets probation, the safety of our communities. So I wanted to create a platform where candidates would have an opportunity to share with the community how they intend to serve and why they think that they are the best candidates. So today we have three guests. Kenya Hooks is running for city prosecutor. Tim Green is running for school board, District 6, which is the Whitehaven area, and he'll explain to you the parameters, as well as James Jones, who is running for criminal court, Division 3. So I'm going to take just a few seconds so that I can allow our guests to come in. If you would bear with me. Again, thank you for being here and thank you for sharing the videos. You can also find me on YouTube. My YouTube name is Kamilah T, Kamilaht. And you can just log in to my YouTube channel and pull up the videos there. Also, the videos are saved on Facebook, so you can always watch the videos on Facebook. So I'm hoping that we will have our guests logging in. And also, I know some of you are making comments on Facebook. I cannot always see the comments as they come up. So I'm working through a lot of the kinks because I want to see the comments as they come up. I can see them after the video posts and after the video is saved, but I can't see them in real time. So I'll reply to the comments after the video, but I can see the YouTube comments as they are made on YouTube. And if you all would bear with me just a couple of minutes. Okay, please continue to bear with me. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're having a few technical glitches with the link, but that's just time for more people to come in. So just keep coming in while we work this Okay, so we should be getting started in a minute. Like I said, I am working out a few glitches. I've been here for the past three. This is the fourth night, and I think I sent the guests the link from last night, and so that's why they're having problems logging in. But I think we should be up and rolling in just a few minutes. Ah, here we go.
Hey,
There
technology.
we go. And I may have clicked something wrong. I'm not sure. But let's see. There we go. So my first guest is Kenya Hooks, and she is running for city court judge, Division One. Welcome, Kenya, to meet the candidates.
Thank you so much for having me. Look, I just want to say, first of all, I appreciate you doing this. This is important information that needs to get out to the voters, and we need people like you who have the passion for making sure that the citizens are informed. So thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. So tell our audience what the city court judge does. What kinds of cases come before that court?
So in Memphis City Court, we are known as the traffic court for the city. 85% of what we handle is traffic. However, we do have jurisdiction over any code, any violation of the city code, which covers the health, safety, and welfare for the citizens of Memphis. So we do have a wide jurisdiction, but the majority of what we handle is traffic violations.
And so when you say traffic, what's the majority of the cases? Is it speeding, running red lights? So most of the cases, what are they?
Honestly, we have a myriad of a lot of things. So we see a lot of speeding. I will say that we see a lot of violations related to compliance issues, tags being out. And I know that's a hot topic right now. And I don't want to get into that and step on anybody's toes. But once a citizen gets pulled over for a traffic violation, typically speeding or their tags being out, what the officers find the majority of the time is that that driver also doesn't have a driver's license or insurance. So we get a lot of no driver's license and no insurance coupled with that traffic violation, which caused the traffic stop in the first place. But yes, if I had to guess, I would say the majority of it is speeding. And to be honest, we don't have speeders in Memphis that are doing very high rates of speed. Those people are very few. We get a lot of tickets 10 miles over the speed limit on the expressway or 5 miles over the speed limit going down Union or Poplar Avenue. So we really do have some good drivers in Memphis. I know it seems like we don't. We have those few bad apples that stand out, but typically the drivers in Memphis are pretty responsible drivers.
So, do you also handle the traffic camera tickets? Are those under the umbrella of city court?
Yes, they are. Those are the red light camera tickets or the speed camera tickets. All of those violations do come to city court. The violation is sent to the owner of the vehicle. They get the notice. Most of the time, they just go ahead and pay that violation because they are guilty of the offense. However, there are some times when you let your friend drive your car, your mother drive your car, even though the vehicle is registered to you, someone else was driving the car at the time of the offense. And so typically we see those people in court who want to fight that ticket because they were not the driver. And we do have a process and mechanism in place to handle those types of issues.
And right now, you are the city prosecutor, right?
Correct. I am the chief city prosecutor.
And so, your job as the prosecutor is to make sure that people are not violating the law. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are responsible for prosecuting the cases that come to city court. I will say that we do hold people accountable for the laws that they break. However, there's a little bit of what I call compassion that you can couple with that. You know, the law says one thing, but there are other ways to punish people for breaking the law. We don't always have to give you a fine and have those points show up on your license. We can send you to a defensive driving course. And that helps in a myriad of ways. Number one, you're taking the class to be a better driver. So once you get back on the street, if you've listened to 2 minutes of that class, you're going to be a better driver than you were before you took it. It also helps with your insurance. Some insurance companies will look at that defensive driving school certificate, and they could probably adjust your rates a little bit so that your insurance rates go down. So that's just one example of how we hold the people accountable for breaking the law, but also show them a little bit of compassion and alternative ways to hold them accountable.
So, as a criminal defense lawyer, I would get a lot of people who were charged with driving on a suspended license. And then we would go and look back to how the license got suspended. And it was often for a speeding ticket that they didn't show up to court for. And sometimes that would have been dismissed had they shown up to court. And once you get a certain amount of those, your license gets suspended, and then it's a criminal offense and you owe so much money. And that's why so many people in Shelby County do not have a valid driver's license. So how important is it for people to actually show up when they have a court date?
It is very important, like you just stated. If you don't show up for court, there are consequences. That ticket does not just go away, right? And those consequences affect your license, which could affect your livelihood. As we all know, the public transportation system in Memphis is not the best as far as the routes and getting people from point A to point B in a timely manner. So citizens of Memphis need to be able to drive a vehicle to get to work, right? And so if you don't have a license, technically you're not supposed to be driving because you're breaking the law. But as we know, people need to make a living. So folks are going to take that chance and drive a car even if their license is suspended. And once you start that cycle, it is so hard to get out of because there are fees on top of fees on top of fees. And if you are not making a good living to begin with, and then you have to pay $1,000, $2,000 to get your license back, it just puts you in a deeper hole. I tell everyone, as soon as you get the ticket, if you want to be held accountable for it, just pay the ticket immediately. If you want to come to court, put it on your calendar, come to court. We are a very pro se, defendant friendly courtroom. The majority of the people that we see on a daily basis are not represented by attorneys, and we understand that they don't know the law. So it's our job to hold them accountable, but also be gracious enough to explain the consequences to them of what happens if you don't pay this fine, should you be assessed one. If you do not go to the driving school class, there are consequences. And so I would always tell someone, please, please, please come to court. Do not miss your court date because your license potentially could get suspended.
Absolutely. That is so important. So you're the city prosecutor now. Why have you decided to run for city court judge?
So I have been prosecuting cases for the city of Memphis for 9.5 years. My experience and knowledge in that court system is unmatched. There is no other person who has more experience working in that courtroom as an assistant and also as a chief prosecutor than I do. I want to bring that experience to the bench. I think it's very important to have a judge on the bench who's actually practiced in that courtroom, who actually knows the law. And so on day one, I'm ready to serve. There's no learning curve for me. I want to bring that experience to the bench to help the citizens of Memphis. I actually care. 9.5 years is a long time to work in that type of environment. You have to have the right temperament and compassion and be able to deal with people. I really enjoy my work. I just want to transfer that over to the bench to make sure the citizens have someone who is knowledgeable, who cares about the court, and who cares about the citizens.
So, why do you think you are the best person for the job? And more in particular, you have as your key points experience, compassionate, and trusted. So, in that context,
the experience, 9.5 years of prosecuting cases in that court. And actually, I've prosecuted several hundred cases in the very courtroom for which I seek to be elected as judge, and that's Division 1. I've practiced in all 3 divisions of city court, but alone in that one courtroom, Division 1, I've handled several hundred cases over the years. So that's the experience. I've helped to draft some of the ordinances that we prosecute. So when city council decides that they want to pass a new law and it's related to traffic, I advise them on what's legal. Do we have the jurisdiction to do that? So I partnered with them to help draft those ordinances. The compassionate part, you know, I love people. I love engaging with people. I love helping people with their problems. And so I love to find solutions for people. We get a lot of folks who don't have driver's license. Some of them have literacy issues. You know, when you start talking to people, well, why don't you have a license? Explain to me why. I never took the test. Well, why not? Well, Ms. Hooks, I can't read. And so there are resources available to those people. If you don't know those resources, if you're not prepared to empower the citizens with that information, you are part of the system that's allowing them to fail. So I want to pass on the knowledge that I have, and then trust it. I've been trusted by the mayor. He appointed me as chief prosecutor, Mayor Strickland. I was trusted by Mayor A.C. Warden. He appointed me as an assistant prosecutor 9.5 years ago. I'm also trusted by my fellow colleagues. I recently was endorsed by the Ben F. Jones chapter of the National Bar Association as the most qualified candidate in this race. I'm also trusted by the members of the Memphis Bar Association. I won the judicial poll as the most qualified candidate in this race. So the 3 things: experience, compassionate, trusted. I check all of those boxes.
and I want to ask you some more about the people not being able to read. So, if you can't read, how are you able to take the driver's test? What resources are available?
So there are no resources currently available to allow you to take the test. You will need to be able to read at some point to be able to answer those questions. So, you know, you got to start somewhere. There are adult literacy programs across the city for folks who have challenges with reading. So those type of resources available. So when I say empowering people with the information, you got to start at square one, right? They need to get themselves involved in one of those programs to learn to read and work towards being able to pass the driver's test. Now, I have a 16-year-old who's recently taken the test. She's a very smart girl. I looked at some of those questions and they are difficult. There's some math on there that you need to figure out, blood alcohol level and all those things. So just imagine someone who can't even read trying to navigate that space. It's nearly impossible. And so what I try to do is pair people up with resources that can help them, not only with the license issue, but in life in general. You know, you need the skill of reading to be able to survive in society.
And lastly, I'm always concerned about the efficiency of the court system. And a lot of times people feel like if I have to go to 201 for something, if I have a ticket or whatever, I'm going to be there all day and in a long line. So, what efforts have been made to make the city court office more efficient?
So I'll just speak from the prosecutor's office perspective because that's my current role as the chief prosecutor. When COVID started, my office and my assistant, Vivian Felder, took the lead on implementing virtual court. We did the research, looked at all the pieces that needed to be involved, project managed the entire process. Unfortunately, it never came to fruition my current position as a chief prosecutor, I don't have the authority to make those decisions for the court system. Those decisions come from the administrative judge in conjunction with the city court clerk's office as the keeper of the record. But there was an opportunity there that we saw, a need that needed to be met. Unfortunately, we were not able to put that process in place, but just something as simple as virtual court. There's no reason for 400 people to be standing in line for a speeding ticket that's 10 miles over the speed limit that will be dismissed by the judge because we allowed them some grace. And so those are things that I would like to do with city court, is implement virtual court, and also just progress the court forward. There are a lot of things that we can be doing with technology that we're currently not using. You just need to have a person in place who's really willing to take up the charge, who is able to have conversations with other stakeholders and convince them that this is what we need to do for the betterment of the citizens. It's not about me. It's not about another judge. It's not about the city court clerk. At the end of the day, it is about the citizen, and we want to do everything that we can within our power to make sure that the citizen is served correctly and efficiently.
Thank you. Kenya Hooks is running for City Court Judge Division 1. Early voting starts tomorrow and goes until July 30th, correct?
That is correct. I would suggest you vote early. It is a long ballot. There are over 85, I believe, different races on that ballot. 41 of those races are judicial. Go to the Election Commission's website, look at the sample ballot so you already have an idea of who you want to vote for. You will probably spend 10 minutes at that booth making your selections and hitting next. Go all the way through. Don't stop. You got to make it through to the end. We want everyone to make sure that their vote counts. Please go vote.
Thank you so much, Kenya, for joining us. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good night. All right. Thank you, everybody. We had a few glitches in the beginning, but we worked them out. My next guest is Tim Green. He is running for, and we have Tim right here. He is running for Shelby County School Board, District 6.
That's right.
Good evening, Tim. Welcome.
Hi, how are you this evening?
I am great, and I love your green background. You gonna make sure
worked out.
Tim Green.
It just worked out like that. Well, I just want to thank you for just this platform. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm so appreciative that you even give me a couple of minutes to even speak with you tonight. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Tell us what position you are running for and what that encompasses. What's District 6?
Yes. So I'm running for Memphis Shelby County School Board Commissioner, and that's specific for District 6. District 6 is part of Whitehaven. It is Westwood, and it is South Memphis and Riverside areas. So pretty much everything that goes down to the Mississippi state line, we come up to about Walker. And then west side, we go to the river. And then we're a little bit past Mill Branch when we on the east side of it. So it's a pretty large district. And I grew up in the area as well, so I'm very familiar with it. And when we look at the school board, they have three main things that they do on the school board. One of them is create and implement policy. The next is establishing a budget. And making sure that budget is, well funded and taken care of. So they watch that. And then the third thing is managing our one employee. And the one employee we have is the superintendent.
So why did you decide? I'm reading over your resume, and you've been a school teacher. You've been a trainer, educator, teaching teachers. You've spoken in Israel, all over the world. Why have you decided to run for school board in Memphis?
Well, I think the real reason why I ran is my district. Like I grew up there. I grew up in Valley Forge Apartments, right over there by Crystal Palace. And I know what people put into me in order for me to be successful. My mom was a single mom. We grew up in low income housing. But the village around us made sure that I was taken care of and my sister was taken care of as well. I went to amazing schools in the district: Grays Elementary, John P. Freeman Optional School, and Whitehaven High School, class of 2003. And everything I learned, each school, each teacher taught me and prepared me for life. And that's why I believe I really had the heart to go into education. And I think this is the best time to go after this position because we are in a crucial state in education right now. So I believe with my background, with being an educator in the classroom, with being on school leadership teams, to mentoring teachers, to training other teachers around around restorative practices, my work that I've done around youth mental health and social emotional wellness, I think it's time right now for me to be a voice on the school board.
So let's explain what you mean by restorative practices in schools.
Yes, so restorative practices can pretty much, we're implementing a theory of change inside of the school. And what that means is pretty much we're just making sure that the students and educators are taken care of when it comes to their social and emotional wellness. We know the biggest thing right now that we're facing is our test scores or how students are progressing in schools. We have a huge push around literacy. A lot of that can be worked out, or we can get to a better place if we also focus on the social and emotional wellness. So when it comes to restorative practices, that could look like something as simple as daily morning meetings with students, checking in with them, seeing if they are ready to roll and ready to start the day. It also looks like community circles that are held at the schools. It also looks like restorative circles as well. So let's just say there's a day in class and a student isn't having a good day and they act out. So of course there are consequences that come with that. But we have a restorative circle to say like, what happened in this situation? What were you thinking about? What led to this to happen? Who or what was harmed in that situation? And how can we repair it after that? I know that might sound very cookie cutter, but it's not. And it's not just saying that the student will have no consequences at all. That's not what it is. I've trained different schools on these practices. And actually one time I had a teacher come in, she was a seasoned teacher. This was in Chattanooga. And she said, look, I enjoyed your little training, but I don't think this is going to work with our kids. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, take this little card with you. And I gave her those questions that I just told you. And I said, if something happens overnight or tomorrow, think about this card or pull this card out. So the next day she comes back and she said, guess what happened last night? I had to use that card. I said, what happened? She said, me and my son got into it and I ran to the refrigerator and I pulled that card off and I said, who was harmed in this situation? And I started laughing. And she said, but we sat there and talked for hours about stuff we had never talked about before because we were able to structure that conversation.
Wow.
I believe that it needs to be like real life in action work for people to see that it works. I've been in schools where we've implemented or piloted our program through my co-founding the organization Memphis Restorative Justice Coalition. And we've had some teachers that were very apprehensive. They were like, this is not going to work. I'm not going to do that. But then we saw the data come back and we saw all these students being in class longer. Their grades were improving. And then we saw the teachers who was like, nah, we're not going to do it. Guess what? They weren't having good results in their class. So it takes time and effort. But I think to do that on a large scale here in Memphis Shelby County schools, it will take a lot of work, but we'll have to get to a place where we're doing it with fidelity. And I really think if we put a lot of resources behind social emotional wellness, we can see improvements on the academic side as well.
Wow, that's awesome. What about mental health resources? Why is that so important to you? Why is that a part of your platform?
Mm-hmm. As an educator, I know my first month of teaching in the classroom, I cried almost every day. Not because of the students, but because of the weight of what I was there to do. I was also the only Black person on my team with 98% Black boys in my classroom. So I wanted to be a great example for them as well. So I was beating myself up about that until I decided to, seek help and seek counseling So we're like, let me get on the right track because I really want to be here for our students, for the students. So let me work on myself. We have a lot of people who are teaching that suffer from ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And then we also have students who are facing ACEs as well. So it's like, how do we get to a space where we're taking care of the mental health wellness of our students, our educators, and our families? And for me, being in the classroom, being a dean, and being the first person to handle discipline, and seeing how sometimes leadership would just be like, hey, let's suspend it for 3 days. Let's suspend it for 5 days. Like, no, what? Hold up. Let's take a beat. Let's see what happened, and get from there. Because if you come back, you suspend it for 5 days, and then he comes back and he falls back into the same thing. Now you want to suspend it for 5 more. What are we really doing here? We're not doing school. So how do we remedy that? And also, I think, and you probably know this as well, in our community, it's such a big stigma around mental health. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do all that. But we need help. We need additional health and resources around that. And I know the district is making a push for that as well. And I'm glad to see that. But we need work around that. Just like I talked about the restorative practices, we need to do these things with fidelity. And I think also, if we can do more things around mental health resources for our students, our families, and our educators, that can also impact the academic side of things.
So tell us about the Dividend. You started an organization called the Dividend. What is it, and why did you think it was important and needed?
Yes. So my first year of teaching, I started studying social emotional learning. And then while I was studying it, I saw that a lot of boys that I worked with would have issues with other teachers. Now, I took the time to build a culture in my classroom. You see, I'm, doing a lot of stuff with my hands and stuff. I'm not a boring person, so I didn't want to have a boring classroom. So a lot of them love being in my class. So I noticed that they would have issues that, some would come to me and tell me things that were going on. They would just be upset about stuff. And it's like, you know what? Okay, so I gave up one of my planning periods and I started to look more into social emotional learning and developed the class, the Dividend. And what we learned in there is we went through social emotional learning. So and stuff that they call social emotional learning now, is like, we talked about conflict resolution. We talked about respect for each other. We talked about healthy relationships, like with anybody around you. But we did that in cool ways. So like one time we would talk about respect. And we talked about respect for adults. And I would play them the episode of The Cosby Show when Vanessa went up to Baltimore to have big fun with the wretched.
Right.
And then, like, they're younger. They're like, they've only seen reruns and stuff. So we're having fun and talking about that. But then after that, we have structured questions that kind of follow that same model that I talked about earlier. Like, so what happened? What were you thinking in that situation? Who was harmed in that situation? And how do we repair this harm? And once we keep doing those questions over and over again, sometimes they'll beat me to the punch and start saying the questions too. But it really showed them that, number one, someone was there for them. Number two, it helped them to self-regulate themselves. They didn't need any adult to come in and tell them, you know what, I don't know, I want to do this and I want to do that. But they were able to do that. And that program actually led me to co-founding Memphis Restorative Justice Coalition with one of my friends since kindergarten, Latricia Adams. We received a grant from an organization and we started doing work to reduce the amount of suspensions and expulsions for Black and brown students here in Shelby County. And that's when I was able to go into schools and pilot the program. And the rest is history.
Wow. Well, you are doing some excellent, awesome work. I could go on and on. We're almost out of time, but literacy is a major issue in our community. As a criminal defense lawyer, I represent so many people who cannot read or cannot read well. They can't read well enough to understand a legal document that they're signing related to their lives. And I was in Cuba a couple of years ago, and they had they were proud of the fact that they have a very high literacy rate, and they made a great push to make sure everybody in the country knew how to read. And I was very impressed by that, and I'm very disappointed when I find out that my clients can't read or can't read well. And some of them have graduated from high school,
Mhm. Yes.
or made it to, 10th, 11th grade. And so I know it's not an easy answer, but what are some of the things or a few things that are being done around literacy?
Mhm. One big thing we see now is a huge investment around literacy. You see a huge push from the district with the third grade commitment, and that's getting the community resources together to say like, hey, our third graders are passing through. We're letting 97% go on to the next grade, and they're not reading on grade level. So what are we doing here? So now we're looking at second grade and we're saying like, oh, so now they're putting in benchmarks to say, this is where you need to be by the time you get to third grade. If you are not there yet, we will provide a service for you over the summer to catch you up so you can be ready for third grade. And third grade is important. Several studies talk about the importance of third grade and that shift. So it's a great way to start the conversation around literacy. Next, we need resources in our communities to help our families and our parents be able to read and have these conversations with their students. A lot of times, and we've seen over the years and over the decades, we've seen school is just a place like we send them, that's it. You're supposed to learn at school. But you're also supposed to learn at home. But providing resources for those people in the household as well is important and essential for learning to continue. While I was in the classroom, if there was something that my parents didn't understand, they would hit me up to the point of like, I just did a Google Classroom. I was like, hey, y'all go in there. I'm putting on every lesson. You can go in there and watch it at your own time and do what you want to do. And parents come like, man, I like that little clip you showed the other day, or I need something else about, when you talked about the NFL and y'all did Newton's 3 laws and all this, like, so I want to do that. And, so making it an educational experience for the entire family helps with literacy as well. But we definitely have a long way to go and a lot of resources are needed around it. But the first step is investment in it, which that's what we're doing. And then also making sure that we have organizations that can support families as well.
Well, we are out of time, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all of this this wonderful information with the listeners. And you can vote. Once again, early voting starts tomorrow. Tim Green, School Board, Shelby County School Board, District 6.
District 6. And if you need to know exactly what your district is, because there was a little bit of redistricting that happened with the school board seats. So if you can go to shelbyvote.com and then go to what district am I in, it's going to be a drop down. You put in your address and it's going to tell you exactly what you'll be voting for.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me, Tim. Have a good night.
You too.
James Jones is running for Criminal Court Division 3. Thank you so much, James, for being patient. I sent the wrong link to the guest, and so we got started a little bit later tonight, but we are on the roll now.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. And tell us what seat you are running for and why.
So I am running for Criminal Court Judge, Division 3. This is the court that currently Judge Bobby Carter is the judge. He is retiring, and so it's an open seat. The reason why I am running is because I've been practicing in criminal court almost the entirety of my career. And although there are a lot of good things happening in criminal court, I believe that there's a lot of room for improvement. And I'm hoping to be that improvement. We have a lot of programs that I think that we could better utilize. We have a lot more of ability to affect the community than just in the courtroom. And so I want to be a judge that does that.
So how does a case get to criminal court? What kinds of cases do you see and how do they get there?
So criminal court deals with primarily your felony cases. That's a felony is any case that has the potential of more than 1 year of jail time. So almost all cases generally will start in what's called general sessions. That is where most cases really come to fruition. But the more serious cases, the felony cases, are ultimately going to go through an indictment process after the grand jury, and then it's going to result in criminal court. And those are the courts where you have the right to have a trial by your jury of your peers. And so you're dealing with your more serious offenses. Though those courts can still hear your misdemeanors, generally those are worked out and down in the general sessions courts.
There seems to be a overall lack of confidence and trust in the judicial system in the country, in Memphis. How can judges play a role in instilling more confidence in the system?
Well, I think the first thing that the judges can do is be seen outside of the courtroom. Oftentimes we have this perception that we can show how much we care when people get to the courtroom. But, I was told when I was younger that no one cares what you know until they know how much you care. And that is the first thing that I think the judges have the ability, and I would even go as far to say as an obligation to the community, of being seen outside the courtroom. And I think that is one way to garner the confidence. But also, when people get into the courtroom, it's a matter of making the people realize that they're not just a number, that you actually know what is going on in their case, that you actually care about what's going on in their case. And we have a lot of good judges that are on the bench right now that show that, where they follow up and make sure that the person is getting their GED, that they're getting the gainful employment that's being required when they go on probation, and not just waiting until the probation period ends years down the line. And I think when you show the individuals that you care about their progress and you care about them individually, I think those steps allow for the opportunity for confidence to be restored in the community.
What do you consider some of your greatest professional accomplishments?
There's one case that I think stands out the most to me. I was representing a young man who was charged with an aggravated robbery, and we put on the best case that we could put on. And ultimately, the jury decided against our position and found my client guilty. And, which is a weird thing for that being one of the hallmark cases for me. But when we finished up with that case and I started walking outside, his grandmother came up and gave me a big hug. And she said, "Thank you so much for fighting for us." And that kind of restored my perception of what it is that I do. It's not a matter of getting defendants off. It's a matter of giving them their day in court and fighting for them when they oftentimes don't have the legal background and the legal knowledge to be able to fight for themselves. And so that case for me really stands out. And when I'm having a hard time as an attorney, I try to remind myself that that's what I'm in here for, is to be able to make sure that these individuals that we have the opportunity to represent have their day in court. And I think that also transfers into the judge's role and ensuring that each of the people that come in the courtroom get a fair opportunity to have their case being heard and be able to do so with some kind of without the delays that we often see in the court. I have clients that have been waiting years for their trial, and that, not to put that on anybody's plate and transfer the blame, but we need to do better in moving our cases along. And so I want to be a judge that helps that process as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when you told your story about the case that your client was convicted and his grandmother gave you a hug, and I'll tell a quick story. I represented a woman came to me and she said, I want you to represent my son. And so I started to talk to her about, I couldn't promise her any kind of result, and that, it was the charges and the evidence, it was looking like, I don't know, but I'll do my best. And she said, oh, you don't have to go through all of that. I know. And then I said, well, how do you know? Who did you talk to? She was like, oh, I know because I was on one of your juries. And then I said, well, what jury were you on? And then she told me the name of the man, the person that I represented. And then I thought back and I said, wait a minute, he was found guilty. I said, y'all found him guilty. And then she said, oh, he was guilty. She said, but you fought for that man so hard that I said that if I ever needed a lawyer for anybody I know, that I was going to find you to represent him. So it really is about people wanting somebody to stand up for them and fight for them, and not just feel like they're shuffled through the system and shuffled off, to prison or wherever. But, we hear about a lot of people who have been wrongly convicted of crimes, and a lot of them have served long sentences, 10, 20, 30. I heard of a man, he served 50 years of his life and was found, was exonerated in his 80s, and so what can judges do to play a role in preventing wrongful convictions?
I wish that I could say that that the judges have the ultimate control with that, and I believe that judges have more control over it than is being shown. But it's one of those, when you're dealing with a jury system, with all the faults that our jury system has, we have entrusted a jury of our peers to hear a case and be the ultimate triers of fact to determine whether the person is guilty or innocent, or whether they're found to be guilty. And so I think the judge's role in that is making sure that that person is in fact receiving a fair trial, and making sure that the prosecutors are presenting the evidence, that they're being held to the standard that we would expect them to be held to. And then also making sure the defense attorneys are being held to the standard that they should be held to. Like, the judges do have control over those aspects. They can make sure that the attorneys that are representing the clients are prepared. When they are arguing motions, it is very apparent when you're dealing with attorneys that are prepared for their cases and their attorneys that are not prepared for their cases. And it's not a matter of calling that attorney out in front of everybody and embarrassing them, but it could be an opportunity, a teaching moment, to pull them aside and say, hey, this is something that you can be doing better. This is something that you may need to work on. When you're dealing with younger attorneys, and making sure that they are following the right examples, and suggesting getting mentors. Like that was one of the things that when I first started practicing, that was one of the first things people told me, was you need to find a mentor. And I was lucky enough I was able to fall in, and be welcomed in by Attorney Sam Perkins. And he took me under, his wing and showed me things to do to make myself better. And I think as judges, I've had some of the judges, some great judges, the late Judge Beasley, that would pull me aside and give me pointers on things that I could do better. And so it's just a matter of having those relationships to where you can interact with the prosecutors, interact with the defense attorneys, and make sure everyone is doing their job to the best of their abilities.
Well, any closing words for the listeners?
So one thing that I always tell people is, as they say, that quote that you have, that you can't judge a man until you've walked a mile in the shoes. And that is one of the things that I've had the opportunity. I've grown up in the same type of areas that a lot of people in our community have grown up in. I've seen the struggles firsthand of what poverty and what gangs and what those things, the impact that they can have on our community. I've seen the impact of good judges, and I've seen the impact of judges that have not been as good as they could have been. And seeing those, in addition to the legal experience that I have given me, I guess, a unique skill set in qualifying me to be a judge. That, and as they say, it's not just who you know, but it's who you know that's willing to say that they know you. And right now, I've had the opportunity and the blessing to be endorsed by the Shelby County Republican Party, the Shelby County Young Democrats, the Sheriff's Deputies Association. And those are the individuals that work in the courtroom every single day. They see the attorneys interact with their clients, interact with the court, how they handle their business. And they are confident that I can be the best judge for Criminal Court 3 and also the National Bar Association. And I appreciate you taking the time and doing this interview and speaking with you. And I've enjoyed watching the other interviews that you've done. So thank you for this platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night to listeners. And I'll let you all know when the next episode will be. It'll be in the next couple of days. I want to interview as many candidates as possible. As many people have said, this is the longest ballot in Shelby County history. There are 80 plus positions on the ballot. So that's, very extensive. So I want to do my part in educating the public. Everybody have a good night and be safe. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
I'm trying to end it.